This week, Amer Deeba from Normalize is with us to discuss the effect of the SEC's new breach reporting rules. Then in the enterprise security news, we've got funding, acquisitions, mergers, new companies coming out of stealth, self-destructing USB drives. You can now work in your sleep, literally. More AI glasses. Ransomware hits 1 billion for the first time. Lots of reports. Canada bans the Flipper Zero. Software graveyards and smoke screens. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Graylog is on a mission to make threat detection and incident response easier, faster, and more affordable. They help cybersecurity teams reduce risk across attack surfaces with SIM, log management, and API security solutions. Their newest offering, Graylog API Security, adds a new layer of defense by discovering rogue APIs, monitoring for threats from inside the perimeter, and providing detailed guided responses. Full fidelity capture of API requests and responses ensures you can perform complete investigations and meet regulatory requirements. Some popular and persistent API myths have almost become threats themselves. Go to securityweekly.com/Graylog and watch the video there to debunk the top 5 misconceptions surrounding API security. 2024 will be the year of cryptography, driven by compliance requirements like PCI DSS 4.0 and the long-awaited NIST-standardized post-quantum algorithms. No longer can enterprises take their cryptography for granted. Cipher Insights from Quantum Exchange brings clarity to cyber risk blind spots that other point-and-scan solutions miss. The continuous network monitoring and response tool flags, scores, and prioritizes dozens of crypto risk factors in near real time, displayed through a single user-friendly dashboard for efficient management and remediation. Empower your NOC and SOC teams with actionable intelligence. Demonstrate proof of strong encryption required for zero trust. Gain the visibility and crypto inventory needed to begin your quantum-safe journey. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/quantum exchange. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy World Hippo Day. This is episode 350, recorded on Thursday, February 15th, 2024. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Admiral of AI, the Captain of Content, Katie Teitler-Santullo. How you doing, Katie?
I'm well. How are you?
Pretty good. Sounds like you had an interesting Valentine's Day. You want to tell us about the drink you had?
I did. I'm not normally much of a... I'm not normally one to go out for Valentine's Day, but my husband wanted to this year, and we just went to a pretty low-key place, but I got a martini with dry ice. The bartender had to remind me, and she was reminding all the tables not to please not to drink the drink until the dry ice. Here, I'm gonna try to show a video, see if it.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. That looks pretty cool.
So there you go. If you're not watching, it looks like a Harry Potter drink, but it was really fun.
Very exciting.
Nice. Yeah, all about the show, all about putting on a bit of a show. So we always look up silly national days, international days, and it is World Hippo Day. So I wanted to grab some facts about hippos. And it's funny, I started Googling facts, and websites disagree on whether or not hippos can swim. Obviously, they spend a lot of their time in the water. It kind of protects them from the sun. Though I also learned that they produce their own sunblock. They produce some kind of red, oily substance that protects their skin from the sun. But yeah, some sites said they're excellent swimmers, and other sites said that they couldn't swim at all. They can't swim, can't float. They basically just walk in the water. But they can hold their breath for like 7 minutes. So if anybody knows which of these is right, and by the way, National Geographic itself is on both sides of this issue. I found places on National Geographic websites where they both say excellent swimmers and can't swim at all. And we need somebody, if anybody knows animals really well, to chime in here and
an expert to tell us. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's
my son's favorite animal, by the way. So we talk a lot about hippos at home, but we assume that they swim. So
right. And it's it's just really weird. Another interesting fact is the hippo's closest living relatives are whales and porpoises. So I found that interesting. I found that actually not that surprising. They're pretty large. Their heads got pretty big. I can see that. I can see them being close in terms of evolution. But enough of hippos. We got a quick announcement here, and then we'll jump into the interview. Security Weekly listeners can save $100 on their RSA conference pass, and RSA conference takes place this May, second week of May 6th through May 9th in San Francisco and on demand. To register using our discount code and save that $100, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC24 and use the code 54USECWeekly. So 54, the letter U, and then SEC Weekly. We hope to see you there. All right, and today's topic is the SEC's new breach reporting rules. We're excited to have Amer Deeba, CEO and co-founder at Normalize, with us today. Amer has over 2 decades of experience in Silicon Valley with tech and startups, has expertise in product marketing and driving company growth, and he's also the Middle East liaison and a board member of the Eduardo Couto Foundation, which I'm hoping I said right, an organization that aims to provide impoverished children with access to competitive education. Welcome, Amer.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for this warm introduction also.
Did I say the name of the foundation correctly?
You said it very well. Yes. Thank you.
All right. All right. So it feels like this new SEC rule has just taken forever to come because there was a whole comment period. And then once it did become official, like it took a while for the rule to become official, but then to actually be enforced and take effect, I think wasn't until mid-December last year. So is this,
exactly.
Amer, is this something that you followed closely all the way through?
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, it was also very related to what we do in our business. So we followed it, and it was expected to be kind of in the making for a while. And when it was announced, there was a lot of feedback and input from industry, and finally it went into effect last December. And overall, I think it's a very good thing because it creates more transparency at the board level. And we can also, as consumers of these businesses, we get to know and better and understand how they manage their security and how they can manage any data related to us. So it's something I think been welcomed by almost kind of the multiple industries and all type of luminaries and security experts, and it seems it's on the right track to provide a lot more transparency about cybersecurity and make it make cybersecurity more visible at the board level.
Right, and because this is the SEC, this applies specifically to public companies, correct? Wouldn't have any enforcement power if you're not a public company, if you're a private
company. Correct, yeah. And the whole idea is that when there's an incident happening in your organization, and that incident could impact by any form or shape the business or the stock price or the reputation of the company or anything that could lead to disruption of that business, us as shareholders and consumers, it's our right to know what happened and why, and understand all these details, so we could make the right decisions about transacting with this company or anything related to it.
Sure. And you're a worldly guy, as I'm going to assume from the bio that I read out. The U.S. isn't the only stock market. Obviously, U.S. being a big tech hub, there's a lot here. Is this kind of in line with what other countries are doing? I know there's a stock market in London and Stockholm, Tel Aviv. There's all kinds of public companies in other markets. I feel like we usually trail behind the others. Things like GDPR, things like that. Are we kind of ahead of the curve here, or is everybody else
in this case? Yeah, I think. Do you have other regulations that are like GDPR in Europe? But in terms of from a regulatory framework that kind of came and got enforced like that, I think we are at the forefront of it. Yes.
Very nice. And one of the things I noticed about this, just to kind of. Well, and before I jump in there, maybe let's touch on your company a bit. So Normalize is a data security posture management vendor, correct? So
yeah, data security platform. Correct. Yes. Yeah. We help customers really understand their data wherever it is across cloud, SaaS, IaaS, PaaS, on-prem. Visualize it, understand what's in it, what value is it to the organization, where the sensitive data is, and what they need to do to protect it on an ongoing basis and secure it from breaches and those incidents that you have to disclose to your board and to the SEC. So,
right. And we often say, so data breach and breach, breach doesn't technically have to involve lost data, but it's such a common feature of a breach. We do call them data breaches, so the connection makes a whole lot of sense there.
Correct. Yes, and now in terms of they refer to it more in the SEC world, the incident, a cybersecurity incident happened, which most of the time it's a breach of some sort that exposed certain information or certain data from your environment, either stolen or via ransomware or other factors that happened that exposed the company and exposed some critical and made this information public. And the concept of an incident now has, is more what the industry refers to and deals with.
So I generally, in my mind, I kind of separate data breaches into two different buckets. Buckets where they know what happened and they know it was stolen because the data actually got leaked to the public in some form. So we've got folks like Have I Been Pwned database, things like that, where there are actual databases that are maintained. You can actually check and see if your record was lost. And then the other bucket are data breaches where they don't actually know if any data was stolen or taken, but because their logging was so poor or they didn't know where their data was, they have to assume everything was gone. And when you see that number of records lost, essentially that's just like a select count from a database with whatever data they think might be lost. And they're just giving you a total of all the records because they have to assume total compromise. It seems like at least having that level of logging and understanding where your data is, is that something that we're closer to now? Is that something that you focus on a lot with Normalize?
Yes, great question. This is really why it's one of the pillars of our platform, is to give you that visibility to understand where your data is and what's in that data, how valuable it is, who is touching that data, who has access to it, what type of access they have, when they've last accessed it. So, when you have all that information and understanding about your data, wherever it is within the environment and how it's moving in the environment, then you really have the power to answer a lot of these questions in confidence. And so when an incident happens, you can go back to information that you can trust, and you can answer you can get a lot better visibility and answer these questions about that incident with in real time and with a very good understanding of where things are and who touched it along the way. I think as this SEC ruling was going into effect, all organizations were preparing themselves to be ready and to figure out how they need to address it. how they need to report incidents, what data they should disclose or not disclose, what is material or not. The concept of material, I think, I think material is going to be it's going to be the word of cybersecurity in 2024. What's material and what's not to a cyber incident, and should we report it or not? And I've been talking to so many CISOs, especially in the last couple of months about this, and kind of trying to find out what all they're doing. And they all, some are very forthcoming and sharing what they do, but there's a lot of preparations happening internally and workshops within the organization, connecting cyber teams with legal teams, with financial teams, so they really are preparing themselves to be ready when such incidents happen, and to be ready to disclose within the period of time that the new rule is forcing them to do.
So I thought about reading over the SEC rule before this, but then I decided that naturally having a bunch of questions would make sense, so I could just ask those questions here. But I've seen a lot of breach disclosure legislation, like at the state level, different countries. Obviously there's I think at this point probably hundreds of independent pieces of legislation that are around like when and how and why you need to disclose a cybersecurity incident. But I've seen some of them, there is a threshold. It's like if it's less than 10 records or 100 records, or I don't remember precisely what that threshold was, you don't have to disclose. So I was curious if there's any kind of threshold here, or like even one record stolen, with the SEC rule, you have to disclose. Do you have any insight on that?
If that, whatever information that gets stolen, if it has any impact on the day-to-day operation of the business, or material, right? Exactly, it comes back to, and that's where it becomes a gray area. How do you define material? And that materiality can vary from one business to the other. If you are a healthcare organization, it might be different than a financial organization, right? So this is where you, as an organization and as security teams, you need to arm yourself with the right information so you can determine that. And at the end of the day, it's a team effort. Like it's a team sport, as we say, that you have to collaborate internally between all the different stakeholders, including legal and finance and cybersecurity, to determine that. So when you go and disclose it, you have the confidence that you disclose what's required. And I think there's going to be a lot of learning lessons and mistakes along the way. And people, we'll all learn from it and get better and better. And hopefully there'll be also cleaner and clearer guidelines, maybe specific per industry, that when you, in the future, where if this happens, you need to do that. But we're not there yet.
Right. So we're going to need some precedents set here, right? We're going to need somebody who argues materiality with the SEC. And is that going to be public? Are we going to be able to see when somebody challenges materiality in a case or something like that? Or, how do you see that playing out, where we get those precedents set and we kind of understand where the lines are drawn in terms of materiality for disclosure?
So right now, most of the debates, at least from my CISO network and friends that I talk to in the industry, are happening kind of all internally. Once you disclose, and it goes out there. If the SEC wants to dispute it and they want to can have a discussion about it with you, or come out or try to understand, get more details. Absolutely, that's in there. They can subpoena for more information and try to dig in more into it. And we've seen some of these happen publicly in case of exposures and incidents that happened without proper reporting that came with it. And I think those incidents are what led to this regulation to become more and more formalized and go into effect last December. But I think in the next, this is, as everything new, we're going to see some normal disclosures, some abnormal disclosures, some disputes to these. We will learn a lot in the next 12 months, and as an industry and as a whole, and adapt to it and put the right controls in place so we could, moving forward, we could do the right things. And, it all goes back again, and when you're disclosing is to have that visibility on what around your data, around the security incidents, around the logs that allowed you to detect a compromise is happening or an incident is happening, and having kind of a framework that allows you to capture all this information and have proper visibility. So you have all the facts, and once you have the facts, I think determining what's material and what not becomes much, much simpler and much easier to determine.
So obviously materiality is kind of the elephant in the room on this one. I think where the biggest questions are, because it does seem kind of like a conflict of interest that the company who is required to disclose a material breach gets to determine materiality. So I don't know, maybe I'm asking the same question again, but I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts on how that works and how this might play out. Basically, do people have to get caught not disclosing things that were actually material to set those precedents?
Again, you have to take it back. How the main guidance you getting from that? How does it impact the business and the shareholders? Right? Is it going to impact the stock price? Is it going to impact the reputation of the company? Is it going to impact third parties to do business with me as a company? That's where I think the rule and the guideline behind it. And those, yes, again, I think they are open-ended questions in a way, and could be interpreted differently from one business to the other. But you know your business the most. I mean, if I'm like when it comes, for example, in Normalize, I know exactly what's material because I know my business very well and how my customers interact with me and what I need to tell them if an incident happens. So, we have to use our best judgments. And as cybersecurity team, we now have a lot more visibility at the table to advise the business and to say these pieces of information or this data that was impacted via this breach has materiality for these reasons, because we know how it's all connected or what it can lead to external, like where this data can be used against us in the future at some point. So that's where I think you have to take it back to that concept and try to make your best effort and best judgments. And you as the owner of the business and as a board that's in charge of it, then you should be able to make this assessment and determine what's material and what's not, and that they're leaving it. That's how they're leaving it now. If you make a mistake along the way, intentional or non-intentional, hopefully it's non-intentional, then I think they're gonna come back after you.
And one last question before I turn it over, I let Katie ask some questions here. It seemed like there was a bit of maybe some last minute changes around when you actually do disclose something according to this rule. What kind of detail do you have to disclose? How deep into the details do you need to get? I mean, clearly, if you've lost customer records, that you'd expect to see a number, right? You'd expect to see some kind of comfort level around. We actually know what we lost. We know how to communicate that to our customers, things like that. But what details have to be disclosed?
All these details that are considered material, you have to disclose them. So anything that is considered material to the incident that can impact your business has to be disclosed. Now, you can, of course, as a business, that's where some certain information can be removed from the disclosure because you don't think it has direct exposure or direct impact to the so you have to go take it back to what's material and determine. And unfortunately, we're starting to see some examples come out in 8Ks and other disclosures, and those, I think, as you look at them, you'll see, and that information can be so variable from one to the other. Some is very high level in terms of numbers, others it's numbers and details. and data records and other specific information that comes with it, because in that case it was considered material versus not.
Yeah, so it sounds like material is the new "it depends," right? That you hear
Yes.
from an auditor or somebody in compliance. Like, you ask a question, it depends, right?
Yeah. It's as I said, the word of 2024. So cybersecurity.
I can see why. All right, Katie, over to you.
I've got a couple of questions. I want to move from materiality because that's really, really hard to measure. But going back a little, we were you and Adrian were talking a little bit about, okay, this only applies to public companies. And while that might be true, are you hearing or seeing private companies saying, you know what, this is probably best practice that we at least start to think about this? Or are they just saying, all right, this is too complicated, we're not going to bother with it?
No, we're seeing a lot of private companies, especially kind of in the mid enterprise to the large enterprise. They're taking a lot of attention to it, and some that are actually implementing, and some they tell you, well, we already do that. Especially when they come sometimes to buy our solution, one of the things we just sold recently to a finance company, and one of the reasons they purchased that they were able to get the budget for it approved is because they want to be able to measure and understand the value of their data very well. So when they're ready to disclose it for one reason or the other, they have that ability to answer these questions with confidence about the data. And it's a private company, but they're getting ready to go into the public direction. So they're preparing themselves from now and having all the controls in place to have such visibility in order to comply with the regulation. And it got so much attention in the industry. Pretty much every CISO, every cyber team is interested in the topic, is trying to understand how it should impact them or what to learn from it and what best practices they can use it and apply it in their frameworks. We've seen, I think at the RSA conference, there are a number of sessions about this topic, and just looking at the agenda and some of the topics that got accepted. So I'm hoping also at the RSA conference we will learn more and get a lot more information about it as an industry that we can share together and learn from.
So this is a really interesting topic. Compliance is always an interesting and somewhat contentious topic in security. And obviously this law, as with most of them, the intent is to make sure that there's some responsibility and accountability, to make sure companies aren't trying to get around disclosure. But sometimes with different laws, different regulations, there are some really problematic things associated with them. So mostly, let's just set the stage. Mostly this is very positive for the industry, and it gives us something that we need to think about and strive for as, the baseline. But what are some of the things that companies might be concerned with in regard to complying with this particular regulation?
Very good question. I don't know if you remember when PCI came out, the PCI regulation came out, that was in like 2005, right? I recall from, and the main thing there at that point with PCI, because, I was at Qualys at that time, and we had it was a big driver for us. The main thing that came, the main issue that everyone was struggling with at the beginning, what's in scope and what's not in scope for my PCI compliance. Should I be scanning this device or not scanning it? Is it in scope or not in scope? Should I be reporting on it or not? And I feel here the same. There's a lot of analogy here with the scope of the PCI and materiality in the SEC and in this recent SEC regulation, except here it's a little bit more vague, right? So, I think I think that's where going to be people struggling with the most, determining that, and how to prepare themselves to answer these questions when an incident happens, and how to prepare for their board and for their regulators and for the legal team and the finance team, how to prepare this information for them in a way that can be consumed by these other parties in order to determine what's material and what's not. And that's going back to like a lot of CISOs I talk to, what they're doing in these preparatory workshops that they're doing about this is trying to simulate from previous incidents that happened within their organization. How would they have disclosed those incidents if these incidents are happening again? And they do these roundtable exercises with everyone to collect the information, to present it in a way that can be consumed by non-technical, by non-cyber people, in order to determine how it impacts the business or the shareholder, or the reputation of the business to the outside. And this is where I think we're going to see a lot of technology also coming, and a lot of new cyber innovations to help with that. I've already seen some new startups forming in the space, in this category, to really help companies and businesses prepare for this regulation and collect data from various tools and from various telemetry from the environment in order to create these type of reports around an incident and share it internally and help you present and generate a materiality report that you need to disclose. This is where there's a lot of, I think right now, if you talk to many other CISOs, that's the area they're struggling with the most, and making sure they have the right team, their teams are ready and prepared, they have the right technologies in place deployed, they can capture and gather information and telemetry from the environment that they can count on, depend on, and answer questions with confidence to their board and to the regulators.
Great, thank you. That was a really good, thorough explanation.
Yeah, and the other thing also I heard from different CISOs too, Katie, they feel like right now that their personal credibility is on the line. So
Sure.
For them now, they're taking this very seriously, because they can come after them if you end up not providing the correct information just because you, for whatever reason, they are going to be personally liable for these things. So all of them are thinking about that and how it's going to impact them personally. And because of that, they're really taking it very seriously and preparing themselves and the team and the business and the organization to address it in the as comprehensive as possible. And some I tell you, well, we're ready. We've been doing this anyways for the last 10 years, and others are not, and they're really getting themselves ready to do it now.
This also brings up couple of interesting questions, because you mentioned the personal liability, and we've all seen what's been happening in that arena, and right or wrong, good or bad, whatever the case may be, there
exactly.
really is more of an onus on the CISO and the other senior level executives. So what happens when details of a breach change, right? Because now we have these new reporting requirements, and it's rarely what's reported initially. Sometimes it's as much as they know, other times it's, trying to cover up. But a lot of the times, until a team, internal and possibly, hopefully with external teams, until they really get into a breach, they don't know the extent of it. So what happens now under this new rule?
So in the rule, basically, you have to disclose what you know at the time you disclose within the period. I think the 4 days they have to. That's what it basically is very clear about that. That at that point, whatever you know about that incident that is material and impacted you or the business or the customer or the shareholder, you have to report it immediately. As in sometimes when new information is it's forcing you like to be ready and to be prepared, so you have all that information ready and at hand. Like you cannot basically say, you cannot give an excuse, well, I didn't know, because if that happens and you actually additional information is disclosed later on or made public, for example, by the attacker, what have you, you are gonna be basically you have to deal with it.
You have to go back and you have to issue another 8K, right?
I have to issue another 8K. Yeah. So, and we haven't seen it yet happen, but I think we might see cases like that happen in the future. But right now, everything is pointing you like when you issue it, make sure you have all the right information and you can present it in a clean and clear way to everybody. So.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Going back to being ready, so.
Yeah, there might be an example of that with Cloudflare. I haven't read it yet, but I saw that they just released more information about the attack that came from Okta, that impacted them from Okta. So I don't know if that would be a case where they'd have the initial 8K and then this additional one about the same incident.
Yeah, they issued another 8K. I have not looked into it, Adrian, so I don't want to speak to that. But it could be it could be definitely a good example of such an amendment to the initial one. So,
yeah, and like with LastPass, I can't recall if they're public or not. It seemed like that incident they had, or there were several incidents. Like it's all very cloudy now because the information was released, was kind of trickled out over so much time.
But it was mainly communications with their customers, that they were trying to trickle out because it impacted so many of us as users of the platform.
Right, and that must be tough for the folks putting together the communications, like. Like if you have an incident, but you don't have many details, I guess you just say you have an incident and details are going to be forthcoming.
If you're not ready. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Readiness, exactly. Readiness and having access to information is what's going to help you really be prepared to answer those questions and disclose properly and do a thorough job from the beginning. And that requires basically technology, people training, and having the information at your fingertips so you could determine it and present it correctly and as completely as possible. So.
Yeah, and I guess just kind of adding on to that question. What are people doing to prepare, or the flip side of that? What are they missing? What are you finding that people aren't doing with their preparation that they should be doing?
So first of all, do you have the right controls and technology in place that allow you to determine an incident is happening, and as it happened, what impact it had on the organization or on the data that you have within the organization, or so having these tools in place and controls in place so you can detect and then you can collect what got impacted. So we see, for example, customers are buying our solution mainly because they want to make it part of that framework of technology and tools that they're using.
Data discovery, things like that?
Data discovery, understand visibility, not visibility where everything is, knowing where the data is, where the sensitive data is, where are the access, who has access to it, how it could be accessed and where and how, are there any attack paths to it, that where the breach happened and we weren't aware of. So these are the type of, again, these help you determine in real time, where the impact is, if there's an impact, and what impact it had on how many. So if it impacted a couple of data stores, now going into these data stores and knowing how many sensitive entities there are there, how many social security numbers and how many unique social security numbers. You could have, for example, a data store that have 1,000 social security number, but only the 2 or 3 of them is unique. So at the end of the day, you have to report with that two users were impacted, not 1,000, because about the uniqueness of that social security number. So again, all of that information, if you don't have the tools to help you determine it in real time and answer these questions quickly, then becomes a very manual process. That's going to take you a lot of time, and it also will delay you from providing the information so you can determine what's material and what's not. And so that's kind of a small example of where, when you have the right technology in place, it will really help you. It will really help you understand what to do. Another feature, for example, in our platform, we give you the monetary value of your data store. So that means if that data store were to get compromised, what is the monetary value for it? Is it $1 million? Is it a couple of $1 million? And based on that information, also that's immediately like very enlightening to say, okay, this is a couple of $1 million data store. This is a pretty material for me. Then I really need to determine what was the data that was impacted in it, and then extract all that data and make it part of my report that I'm going to disclose to in my 8K. So again, a lot of that. Once you have these capabilities within your security team and security practice and framework, I think it becomes a much easier process to collect the information, to respond quickly within the period of time you need to respond, and to go to the wider team within the organization to discuss what's material and what's not, and what we need to disclose.
Yeah, data is so messy. I remember when I was an industry analyst at 451, one of my predictions was that data would be one of the last things that we would tackle, because it's so difficult to pin down, to put controls around. The moment you start wrapping it up with controls like encryption, it becomes difficult to use, to share, to be productive with. But you mentioned,
and the
PCI.
Cloud made that problem much more. Like it made it a lot more complex and complicated, because now we have data sprawl everywhere.
Well, not just the cloud, SaaS also, right?
Then SaaS, of course. I mean,
I have no idea. My data is being collected at Notion, for example.
Yeah. Notion, Salesforce, Workday, you name it, right? It's going everywhere. So, and a lot of it is sensitive and material. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned PCI. I was a PCI QSA for a while. Before I was a PCI QSA, I worked for I actually got my start at a large payment processor, one of the world's largest payment processors. And I was there for PCI 1.0, for the first couple of years of PCI. So our very first efforts to become PCI compliant at a company that literally had billions of credit card numbers, because our data warehouse had 7 years of transactions, and we did 4.5 million transactions a day. So do the math on that. 365 days a year times 7 years times 4.5 million a day, and we would find them everywhere. It was like glitter. Credit card numbers were like glitter. All of our security tools had credit card details in them, because we had host IPS would take a packet capture. And because PCI, I think even today, still allows you to, or it doesn't require you to encrypt internally, not unless it goes over a public untrusted network. You have to do encryption in transit. So the IDS would have packet captures, the SIM had network data in it, and credit card numbers would show up everywhere. Like, we don't want the security tools to be in scope. This is really, really tricky. But data is a lot like glitter. I think it gets everywhere.
It seeps everywhere, exactly. But I think like PCI had a very good impact, I think, on the industry. I'm hoping, I think this is also the new SEC regulation is going to have a similar impact. I think we got to tighten our controls a lot more. We got to be a lot more focused on how to secure credit card data and data associated with it, and to make companies really think it through before they start processing payments within the organization. So it took multiple iterations. We're at is it 4.x now, I think, for DSS. So it's and I think here we'll see a lot of evolution also to this rule as we learn more from it and see more disclosures and more lessons learned. There's going to be multiple updates and iterations to come.
I don't think I could have wrapped up the conversation any better than that, Amer. So I think this is a great place to thank you for joining us in Enterprise Security Weekly today.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here and had fun with the discussion. Thank you so much for hosting me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be right back in a few moments with the weekly Enterprise News.